Yo, it's your boy GT here from the Gangster Times. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Also hit me up on Instagram, which is gangstertimes_official, and on my Snapchat, type in the search box Gangster from Scotland. And a man who's serving 20 years behind bars has admitted throwing boiling water over a man who murdered his friend in a brutal jail revenge attack. James Wright, who's 27 years old, was jailed for the murder of Craig McClelland in Paisley, flew into a rage when David Collins was put in the cell next to his in HMP Shots in Lancashire. Collins had been jailed for murdering 22-year-old Kevin Bishop, a close friend of Wright's, and dismembering his body. Wright had sworn revenge on Collins, and the court was told, he said, "You killed my pal, you can't live next door to me, and I'm expected not to do anything." So Wright is serving a minimum of 20 years for killing the 31-year-old student, Mr. McClelland, and he hatched a plot for the attack that saw him emptying a boiling kettle over Collins. He was rushed to hospital and treated for burns and blistering. So Wright appeared at Hamilton Sheriff Court on Friday and admitted the assault at HMP Shots in November last year. Wright, whose earliest release date is September 2037, was handed a 20-month term to run alongside his current sentence. So it was stated that both the accused and the complainer were housed in adjacent cells, and during the afternoon of that day, the complainer, David Collins' cell door was unlocked by prison staff. He began emerging from his cell, and literally seconds later, the cell belonging to James Wright was opened and he emerged in possession of a kettle. As he emerged, he moved quickly towards Mr. Collins, and the contents of that kettle, which turned out to be hot boiling water, was then thrown over him, particularly on his head. It caused him considerable pain, and he cried out, which alerted prison staff, and Mr. Wright was returned to his cell. So the defense solicitor, Robert Mitchell, said there is no excuse, but there is an explanation. James Wright had appealed his conviction less than 6 months before this, and it had caused him great distress after it was not granted, despite there being a decent chance of it being successful. David Collins was serving a life sentence, but his victim was a very close friend of Mr. Wright, who had been killed and dismembered. They had been kept apart but found themselves in neighbouring cells, and I'm extremely surprised these two men ended up in the same hole together and ended up in adjacent cells. The sheriff said, even taking into account all of what has happened and what's been said on your behalf, assaulting another prisoner in this manner is appalling and cannot be allowed to take place. I'm not going to impose anything onto your current sentence, but this will no doubt be taken into account when you make an application for release to the parole board. Wright caused fury after killing Mr. McClellan in that random attack in 2017. He was on early release from jail sentence for knife possession and went on the run for 6 months after tampering with his electronic tag. Prison bosses recalled him to jail, but he remained free, despite his details being passed to local police officers. He was using Facebook whilst he was on the run, posting pictures for months after wrecking his tag before launching his fatal attack. And last year, a bid to overturn Mr. Wright's conviction was thrown out by judges. The man that was attacked, Mr. Collins, was caged for a minimum of 26 years, which was reduced to 22 on appeal after dismembering and beheading Mr. Bishop in a savage attack with a machete in a Paisley flat in 2018. The victim's torso was found dumped in a wheelie bin outside the property, and Collins had previously killed his father in an attack with a sword. So crazy news there coming out of Scotland, where James Wright flew into a rage when David Collins, who murdered his best mate Kevin Bishop, was put in the cell next to him at HMP Shots in Lancashire, and he ended up throwing hot boiling water from a kettle over him. Guys, what do you think with regards to this? Surely the screws would have known that these two had a bit of history between each other, and to put them in adjacent cells seems like a bit of a rookie mistake, or was it on purpose? Let me know what you think. It's your boy GT. Keep it locked, keep it real.